how we attach the antennas to. We have to drive stakes into the ground in 3 positions, 120 degrees apart. That's what stabilizes the towers. It takes approximately an hour to put up one of these things. They're hand crank. Everything's done manually. On other towers, you'll find dipoles attached to the wire antennas that attach to the top, and they're fed off to the trees. We have a, people would be more known to call it a potato gun, but potato guns are illegal in the state, so we call them antenna launchers, and it becomes a gray line, safety thing. And we launch the tennis balls up and over the tree with a piece of twine, tie the end of the antenna to it, and pull our antenna up and over the tree. We have 4 of these towers set up this weekend. There's one here. I don't know if Al can zoom down that way and see the other one we have set up. That one there is actually covering the 20-meter station. We have, there's different frequencies we have on the air this weekend. We have 14 megahertz on the air. We have 50 megahertz. We have 144 megahertz. We got 7 megahertz and 3.5 to 4 megahertz on the air. We are doing CW contacts, which is Morse code. We are doing phone contacts, which is just regular voice communications. I won't get into the details of what field day is. I'm sure there's somebody else that you'll ask about that one. But basically our job is I have to put these antennas up by 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon so the other people can make their contacts. And the whole basic object is to make as many contacts as possible within a 24-hour period.
How many stations did you have set up?
Well, I have 7 stations set up simultaneously. We had to set up 4 of these AB577 military towers and plus 1 regular Roan tower, a triangular-based tower. We set one of those up also. And we try to make as many contacts as possible in a 24-hour period. And it becomes quite interesting. And then at 2 o'clock today, I take it all back down again. It basically, if I'm to walk over this way, all of this stuff compresses into this little cage right here. So it's all compact. You just pick up this whole launcher assembly, you pick it up, you throw it in the back of the pickup truck, and you're off, you're gone.
And nobody knew you were ever there.
Gone like magic. And that's all I have. Any other questions I can help
but
with?
how many people on average? I saw a lot of people around yesterday. Some were working, some were supervising, but on average, how many would you say you would need to be able to put this up?
At a minimum, I like to have at least 5 people. 1 operating the hand crank that goes over here, which cranks the whole assembly up. 1 feeding him with the mass pieces, and 1 person on each guy. These are guy wires. This will hold everything stable. 1 person on each guy watching the top, make sure it's not getting real tilty, tippy, and keep an eye on things. And I do have usually a couple of supervisors, just kind of standing around, looking around for safety. Making sure it's not going to fall on somebody, something. If you notice, most of the vehicles are far away, so if this thing does happen to fail, I haven't had one fail yet in the last 7 years that I've been doing it, nothing's going to get damaged or hurt, personally wise. If this stuff gets hurt, this stuff's all replaceable. So I've been very good at that.
Okay, that sounds excellent. Now, in the background here, I'm hearing some foreign noises like little aliens talking or anything. Do you know anything about that?
I know very little about it, but there's a guy over there named Gary.
Yeah.
What he's doing, he's trying to make satellite contacts. He's farther out in space than I am, so maybe you want to go talk to Gary about being way out.
Now, does Gary use, when he does the satellite, does he use access to these antennas?
No, he's got this funny look. He's got this funny looking thing in his hand. Actually, if you want to go over and see Gary right now, he's trying to contact one now. He's just pointing this. I don't want to be on the receiving end of it. It doesn't look very nice.
No, that's why I try to keep my distance when I see somebody holding an antenna like that. But before we go over and check out Gary's station, I'm hearing noise in the background, some motor running. Just for the viewing audience that's not aware what's taking place. Why do we have that going?
Why? Okay.
And what is that?
Why are we here? We're here for...
Well, that's why I'm asking you.
It's an emergency preparedness drill, okay? When the tornado devastated Springfield, Munson, Brimfield, power was out for days. That noise you hear in the background is a generator. It's a 5,000 watt generator. We're running all 7 of these stations on 2 5,000 watt generators. We have power at Dufresne Park in Granby where we were at, but being an emergency preparedness drill, we run everything on generator power. Yeah, they use some fuel, but it shows to the public that this is what we are here for. This is what we are all about. There was a lot of good reviews during the tornado, that devastation.
Absolutely.
Yes. Especially when it first came through. The Skywarn, I may be getting off my path.
That's
but,
okay.
The people for Skywarn doing the live reports, getting into towns that needed communications at Red Cross shelters. That's what we did, and that's what we're all about, and that's how we practice this. You know, we do a big event once a year, and this is not just this little area. This is statewide, countrywide, all United States, Indo, Canada, Europe. We're just trying to make as many contacts as possible, and over 3/4 of us are running on generators. You know, it's to show the public this is what we are doing, this is what we are here. It's really a great time. Also, you know, it sounds like a lot of work, but it's been a very fun weekend. I love it. I'll do it again.
Now, is the general public invited to see any of this going on? And if they are, is there any requirements that are expected of them?
Yeah, just show up. We are asked to do these events in a public place, a known public place, so the public can come, can see what goes on, because the public doesn't really see us. We're like the hidden warrior. We go in, we do what we got to do, and boom, we're gone again. You know, but you know, we invite the public to come check out our stuff. We invite the public to use the radios. If they want to, jump on a radio, make a contact, across the country. Just so the cell phone age has really, came across and taken away a lot from the hobby. This is actually just a hobby. It's not a job. It's a hobby. We do it for the fun of it.
And for the public service aspect
right,
as well.
Right. But you got into this as a hobby, and then the hobby has many avenues on it. You can do, like Gary's doing, satellite communication. You can work HF, high frequencies. You can do emergency communications. You can do public service. There's just an abundance of ways you can go, and it's a very, very nice hobby to get into. If you're bored with one thing, you can change another thing, and it doesn't really cost you any money. That's the best part about it.
Okay, maybe at this point we can scoot over and talk to Gary about some satellite.
Let's go see Gary.
Okay, sounds good to me. You gonna?
Let me get the monitor.
Okay, we're here at the satellite station, and we have the famous operator that everybody's always dying to have a chance to talk to, because they're always talking about aliens, they're talking about all different vampires and everything. Well, this is something that's real. And what I'd like to do is if we could have a few words from Gary and tell the process that he uses to communicate with by using the satellite. So Gary, if you could give us a little breakdown there for our viewing audience.
Oh, hi. I'm coming up for you.
Okay, we just need you to come this way.
All right, great.
Just so they can get you.
Seems we've already made our contact.
Yep.
All right.
He can edit out the other stuff.
Sure. That's a great
know how that's right. That's right. I don't want to drop that. Okay.
All right.
You can show your antenna.
Okay. Pardon me.
That's okay.
So what we've just done is we've made a contact through amateur radio satellites. Many people don't know that ham radio operators and large clubs have put together actual orbiting satellites that act as a communication satellite. And there's several of them up there. Most of them are in what we call low Earth orbit, which means that they're about 800 miles up in the air, which is considered a low orbit. And they come overhead like many other satellites about 6 times a day. So what this antenna is, and they operate on 2 amateur bands. And you'll notice how this antenna has 2 elements. These are called elements of 2 different lengths. So basically what we're doing is we're transmitting up on this antenna. There's really two, and receiving on this other one right here. And the object really for this particular exercise is just simply to make one contact through the satellite during this field day event, which is basically used to highlight emergency communications for ham radio. So if there's no communications locally, or if, for instance, sunspots or other types of disturbances make it difficult to communicate for whatever reason, the satellites are always there, and they're not influenced as much by sunspots or other kind of natural phenomenon. So they're up there orbiting. We've just made a contact with a fellow in Virginia, and we're hearing right now people in the western part of the United States.
And how would you go about making a contact using the satellite? I mean, I know in the other stations they have CW, they'll have the code there that they send out. The other ones are on the radio. How do you communicate? How do you get your transmission to get to the satellite to be able to go and get a participant?
First of all, you have to know where the satellite is.
Okay, that's a good thing. And how do you know where it is?
And we use a computer program, a tracking program, the same kind of program you would probably use if you were setting up a satellite dish. You need to know what part, but unlike the satellites you have for television, these satellites don't stay in the same relative position in the sky, so they move. So there's various programs that you can buy that will predict when the satellites are going to be within range, and whether or not you have a likelihood of communicating through them. When we say in range, for instance, sometimes they're just in range for a few moments because they're very, very low to the horizon. And when you get in a situation where we are right now, where there's 100-foot trees or 90-foot trees, that makes it difficult to communicate to those satellites. However, a couple of times a day, there's usually what we call passes, or the satellites will appear more than 45 degrees or so above the horizon. And that makes it easier to get over trees. Now, what we're doing is the governments of the world have allocated certain frequencies for the use of these satellites. So, and it's universal. So we know if we transmit within a certain frequency band that we have a likelihood of communicating with an amateur that's in another part of the country or the world. What happens is, again, they go up on one frequency and it comes down on another. So we have something called full duplex. Just like a telephone, we're able to speak and we're able to hear ourselves when we transmit. And that's important because we know if we're actually communicating through the satellite only if we could hear ourselves back. Now, the interesting thing about satellites is because they are moving so fast, the relative frequency that they're on appears to change. Very much like if you were standing at a train station and you heard a train coming toward you blowing the whistle, a pitch of the whistle would appear to change. Well, that predicts the same kind of relative thing happens with radio frequencies. So that makes it a challenge because as the satellite is approaching you or departing from you, the actual relative frequency that appears to you changes. So we have to constantly be changing where we're listening. Now, to make it easier to do that, we have the computer automatically control our radio. So all we need to do is either manually deal and point with the antenna, and in many instances we'll actually use automated control for that. Right now this is automated. We call this the Armstrong method of control because we're doing it with our arm. So the radio, point where you point the antenna would be controlled as well, Sue, as the frequency it's on. And so all you really need to do is be concerned about making a contact. And there's many different awards and kinds of things you would do for speaking with people through the satellite in different parts of the country or over the world. It sort of enhances the hobby. And maybe about 5 or 10% of amateurs are involved in this, but that's a sufficient number to make it a lot of fun.
That's right. It takes it to the next level. So you never have an opportunity to get bored because there's always something more exciting and always mentors like yourself to be able to bring them up into the higher ranks.
Yeah. Well, there's always, the great thing about our hobby is that, as you said, Sue, there's so many different activities. And you could find whatever your enjoyment, whether it's using various kinds of modes to bounce your signal off the moon or just talk to the fellow across the state. That's what makes it an interesting hobby. There's something in it for everybody.
Yeah, Al and I were on 6 meters along with several other amateur operators, and it was so exciting just to be able to get somebody from Texas, and then they'd say South Texas, North Texas, and California. Everybody was working it, and you have to really stay there. You have to have the commitment to it, because I saw you operating in between the raindrops yesterday and stuff, and everybody's very careful about protecting the equipment, but yet there's still a job to be done.
Right, and that's what we're here for, to basically show that if conditions became adverse, that we could open up our stations and we could set up within a short period of time and basically help out and communicate. When there's a saying, when all else fails, there's still amateur radio. So when the cell phones aren't working, you could count on hams that have their own equipment, not funded by the government. They bought it all themselves. It's a hobby to communicate under any kind of situation.
And there's local clubs that anybody that's interested, there'll be some information at the end of this video or tagline, so you'll be able to get the local clubs, make contact with them, and learn far more than what we're going to be able to even show you this morning.
And the great thing is to join a club. We have two clubs, as you know, that joined for this event, and that represents really the majority of the amateurs that are very active in central Pioneer Valley. So basically encourage anybody to if you know a ham, they'll be happy to go to a club meeting. And like everything else, when you get into a new hobby, there's a lot of words and phrases and approaches that seem to be just absolutely foreign, but after a very short period of time, you'll become an expert too.
Okay, thank you, Gary. We appreciate your input.
Thank you. Slide 4.
Okay, good morning, folks. We're at Dufresne Park in Granby, Massachusetts, and my name is Marty Bowen. My call sign is Whiskey 1 Mike Julia Bravo, and I'm an amateur radio operator known as HAMS. Right here is the banner for the Hampden County Radio Club, which is operating a emergency communication field day exercise along with the Mount Tom Amateur Repeater Association, and we are here from Friday at 2 o'clock for setup, and beginning at 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, we run 24 continuous hours, and we have 7 transmitting stations where we participate in CW, which is Morse code, single sideband phone, digital, and VHF, UHF, and this way here. Oh, and also we have a satellite station. So the goal here is to show the general public what we're capable of doing when disaster strikes. And as we have just had a tornado event a few weeks ago in the general Springfield area, we do this every year so that we are keenly trained to be able to anticipate and be ready for tornadoes and other disasters when they do occur. So a lot of the folks that are operating in an exercise were actually a few weeks ago operating emergency communication for local governmental organizations and folks that provide disaster relief like the Red Cross. And this is basically a 24-hour drill for practice. Right here we have the information table where the Hampden County Radio Association and the Mount Tom Amateur Repeater Association have brochures that are procured from the amateur radio group, the national group called the American Relay Association, which is in Newington, Connecticut. Then we put this on here so that people who come into this public event are capable of getting literature which allows them to become informed, and perhaps if they want to become licensed, they'll know where to go and who to talk to. So folks, we traveled about 50 yards by foot out into the grassed area at Dufresne Park, and we stopped at the trailer where the participants of the 20-meter continuous wave operation, which is basically Morse code, are interfacing with one of the 1,800 stations around the United States and Canada that are participating in this annual emergency communication exercise. The operator's name is Matt Wilhelm, and he's a resident of Northampton, Massachusetts. And right now he is running CW from this trailer. And to my left is a vintage Vietnam era military mast with a beam on top, which basically looks like a gigantic television antenna. And Matt is pointed southwest, and Matt is working a station in West Virginia right now, and sending a basic protocol message where he gets the call sign of that particular station and their state location and the number of transmitters and the type of power that they're running, be it emergency or commercial power, which is in an alphanumeric numeric form. We're running a 7 alpha, and we are Whiskey Mike Alpha here, which is a phonetic characters for what Whiskey Mike Alpha is, Western Massachusetts, and the 7 alpha means that we are running emergency power, which is generated based, and we have 7 transmitters around the area that are in continuous operation during the 24 hours, thus we are a 7 alpha. There's also EOCs, which are emergency centers around the nation where the state and local emergency management folks do their work, and they're also operating in this 24-hour annual exercise that is under the auspices of the American Radio Relay League in Newington, Connecticut. So as we pan across the area here, we come upon a trailer to my right, which the 40-meter CW station is in there, and to the rear of the antenna you may see another shorter antenna. The one we were talking about, the military, is approximately 55 feet in height, and as I said, pointed southwest, which gives us coverage across most of the United States.
Can you just start it over again, because I panned away from you while you're talking about that setup and the antenna. Then I'll get that, and then go to the generator.
Okay, so you say as we pan right?
Yeah, you watch what I have, and you talk about watch what I have, and you can talk about what I have in there.
Okay. Presently, we're looking at a new trailer, which is housing the 40-meter CW, which again is continuous wave mode, which is the Morse code that you're used to hearing, the DITs and the DAs. And they're being generated by both mechanical paddles, and also some of the code can be generated using a keyboard with a computer. All the contacts are logged on the computers using a program called N1MM Logger, which is a freeware program and allows the logging of all the contacts. As I said earlier, there's approximately 1,800 stations in Canada and the United States that are participating in this 24-hour event. So when we look slightly to the left of the trailer, there's a small tower over there, which is a commercial tower with a beam on it. And there's also a dipole, which is a wire that is strung from the trees, and it's hung there on halyards, which are shot over the trees using an air cannon, which is somewhat akin to a spud gun. As we move to the left past the AB-577 military mast system, we'll see a small enclosure that has a generator in it. It's one of the 3 generators that's used to generate the emergency power that operates the 7 transmission stations that we will be visiting today. We've already visited the 20-meter behind me, we've looked at the 40-meter in front of me, and we will be going to my left toward a gazebo where you'll see another military AB-577 mast, and that gazebo houses the VHF 6-meter and a 2-meter transmitting the system down there, and that trailer is where the folks who operate the system are able to take their rest when they're not operating. The operation is usually in shifts of sometimes 2 hours, sometimes 4 hours. Some people actually work 12 hours. It depends on how many operators we have that are available. We also pan past the very nice pond system that's in Dufresne Park, which I believe is approximately 200 acres, and we occupy half of that park, basically. Okay, also at the gazebo is a special station, which is a satellite station, which allows the operator to use a computer and a special antenna system that has the ability to rotate on 2 axes. And once it's set, you can track a satellite and communicate with that satellite as you uplink and downlink the signals, uplink to it and downlink from it. And you're able to essentially with the same equipment talk to the space shuttle and the International Space Station, because a lot of the folks, the astronauts, actually are licensed amateur radio operators in their particular country, be it the Soviet Union, Japan, the United States, Germany. So as we walk toward the so basically, to explain what the ARL sponsored field day, what it is, the participating clubs or organizations go to a public place so that the public will be invited and will be comfortable, and they are exposed to what the emergency communication folks are doing to help them in times of disaster and emergency. And so as part of it, there is a point system where it makes it into a fun event to see who can surpass a particular mode and what has to be learned. And so we have a lot of special events where things are taught that are very important to folks that do amateur radio. One of them being a modern way of connecting and disconnecting the direct current which most of the radios operate on. So you're generating DC power from the generators, and you need a very nice system to link that electricity from the generating wires into the apparatus that you're using, and those things are called power poles. And they're a recent innovation, probably 10 years of age, and they become the choice of most providers like Aries, Races, the Mars folks, and in general most amateurs. So we have a demonstration on both Saturday and Sunday, because this is a two-day event, on how to maximize the use of power poles in your hobby and also in your emergency communication work. There's also other events where we're given extra points for utilizing solar panels to charge the batteries, which supply the emergency power to power the transmitters and the computers, because in the event of a disaster, the infrastructure is probably damaged, therefore there's probably no electrical power available for us to communicate with the folks that are going to provide the disaster relief, such as FEMA or the state of Massachusetts MEMA, or folks like the Red Cross. So these are the providers, disaster relief providers, that we supply the emergency communications for until the other folks who have had infrastructure damage can get themselves up and running again. So we usually plan on being at least 48 hours of providing emergency communications for governmental and non-governmental organizations that are working for your relief if you happen to be in a disaster area. Okay, right now we're viewing a small solar panel which can be used to charge a small amperage battery, or most likely keep the charge at a trickle rate so that you're able to utilize it for many hours, because sometimes there is no commercial power available and we don't have the ability to use generators all the time. The generators that we use are gas powered, that is liquid gasoline. Some of them are LP gas and some of them are diesel. Our three are actually just gasoline like you buy at the gas station, and we use the solar panel in a demonstration to show that in a real disaster that we have the capability of keeping batteries running and allow time for the emergency communication to be brought to the affected area. Okay. In addition to operating the radios most excellently, as Matt Wilhelm is doing CW right now, they also wear many hats. Matt's a professional IT man, so he's responsible for the wireless networking of our logging apparatus, so that all the logs, which is the contacts and their times and the data, floods into one central database, which allows it to be easily collated. And when we report to the ARL what we've done, we submit logs that were digitally gathered by the use of the wireless network. We're now walking from one of the main fields that houses 3 of the transmission stations toward the pavilion where the facilities for dining on picnic tables and charcoal and gas grills is housed. So looking through that pavilion, you'll see some of the tents that house the people when they're not operating and they're getting their rest. The rightmost pop-up camper is where the digital station is. Basically, a digital station has equipment that uses an algorithm through a computer to generate digital tones, which is then turned into RF signals, which goes out much the same way that a voice transmission or a continuous wave, or better known as a Morse code transmission.
You mentioned that that's the generators you have in the background.
We're now walking off one of the main fields that contains 3 of the transmission stations. As you can hear in the background, you're hearing the sound of 2 generating stations for the electrical emergency power. One of them behind me and one to my right, which is in another operating field across the entryway. And we're looking back towards the banner for the Hampden County Radio Association and the information table, and looking at the picnic tables and the cooking area behind the picnic tables where the food is prepared and served. Also, you'll notice folks walking in the background, and there's 3 different tents there. Actually, 1 pop-up camper and 2 tents. 2 tents house folks when they're on their off cycles, when they're not operating. And the other one, which is a pop-up camper, houses a digital station where a computer-generated digital noise, if you will, that's generated by an algorithm, is changing to radio frequency and transmitted out through a vertical antenna. And it's used on the other end. The receiving station would take that digital signal, and from it would be created electronically the text of the message. So essentially, it would be akin to what you would think of as the old teletype. The only difference is that in the algorithm there are portions of it that correct so that there is the true message that was generated from one station is always picked up in its correct form. So there's an internal error correction in the algorithm. So that the code is basically from the mid-19th century, and this is basically from the 20th and being brought into the 21st century with new different forms of digital mode, all the time trying to seek the perfect error correction so the messages are pure and what was intended to be sent is actually sent. And we swing to the left, and you'll see the original pop top where there's a 40-meter phone station, which we basically stopped. We're going to move toward my right and go into a second field across the access road where there's 2 stations. One of them, one in a pop-up and the other one in a normal trailer. And each of those has a phone station in it where it's a single sideband is the mode that's being used. And we will be introducing you to a 13-year-old young woman